The United States of America. By some, he's been called controversial.
I'll keep my freedom, I'll keep my guns, try to keep my money and my religion too. Now, keep in mind that some of my guests have been approached by, Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going on the Clay Douglas show?
My message to those guys, if they're listening this morning, is go get a cup of coffee. Maybe you'll learn something.
We both took the same oath, to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that. I'm going to keep my big VA, keep my friends the same, keep the government out of my business, and y'all can keep the change.
He is the free American, Clay Douglas.
We know what we need. We know who to blame.
Catch the Free American Hour, weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern.
I'll keep the USA and y'all can keep the change.
For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamerican.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8621.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. I'm your host, Clay Douglas. My guest today is Adam Furgatch, calling in from Hawaii. Hello, Adam. How are you?
Good morning, Clay. How are you? I'm doing great.
I'm doing well. Just to give you a little blurb here from your website, that it says on your website that you are a fresh, creative voice in national and global financial, political, and social commentary. And your unique insights spark folks to think more deeply and to consider a wider range of solutions for sometimes daunting problems. I like that. J. Edgar Hoover said once, if our average man is faced with a evil so vast they can't even comprehend it. And I think that you possibly touch on that. Now, you talk about an issue, and we've got this up on the website, and links to your site here, talking about corporate personhood. I want you to tell us, try to explain exactly what that is, and as it pertains to the high-profile MF Global bankruptcy case. Now, this was the 8th largest, am I correct on this, the 8th largest bankruptcy in U.S. history, $41 billion of assets, and you lost money?
That is correct, Clay. For your listeners, MF Global was a large commodity brokerage firm and sort of an investment bank type of firm. And last year, in October, they declared bankruptcy. Now, the firm was headed by a very high-profile CEO, John Corzine, who was a former senator and governor of New Jersey, and also he was one of President Obama's biggest fundraisers, so he was very politically connected. And what occurred was that the parent company, MF Global Holdings, the big sort of conglomerate, they had different insurance companies and different brokerages all around the world. The parent company had been making these bets, so to speak, on European sovereign bonds. And when the European debt crisis occurred last summer, those bonds started losing value. And in order to pay off, they had to keep raising collateral to the big banks, Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan and the other banks that were holding collateral. They had to come up with more money. MF Global parent company had to come up with more money. And they then dipped into their customer accounts and stole money from their own customers in order to pay off J.P. Morgan and Goldman Sachs and the other banks. And I was one of those customers. And when they declared bankruptcy, then all of a sudden our accounts are short, shall we say. So that didn't set too well with a lot of people, especially because those commodity accounts were considered sacrosanct. They were what's called segregated accounts. The Commodities Exchange Act of 1934 made it very clear that those accounts must be separate, titled in a customer's name. They cannot be commingled with the firm's funds, but they were, and they were stolen. And I then brought my own motion in the federal bankruptcy court, and I'll tell you about that in a moment, just to make sure that everybody's following me so far.
Okay. This bank or this company here, why haven't we heard? We haven't heard much about that. Now, what and what is the connection? Now, this I find this strange. Maybe we should stop here and go back. You know, I watched the George Bush as he was walking out of the White House give $2 trillion to basically the owners of the Federal Reserve Bank. What? I mean, am I reading this wrong? Am I being naive about this? I mean, it's just like, oh, here, guys.
Are you saying that if you went to the dictionary to look that up, you'd be looking under the B's for bailouts, that kind of thing?
I would say so, yes, sir. It's I mean, let's see, they're printing the money, they're loaning us the money, then we give the money back to them, and we still got to pay the interest on that. Isn't this whole banking system, it's really as George Bush tried to tell us about, now we can see a new world order coming into view, and he's talking about a one world government of the bankers, by the bankers, and for the bankers, the way I read that.
Well, the banking system, of course, as I'm sure you and your listeners are now aware, was under incredible stress a few years ago, and literally there was almost a collapse. And why did it happen is coming out. In this modern day of communications and internet, more people are now becoming aware of how that system works. I think it was Henry Ford who said many years ago, I think the quote is that if the American people understood what the banking system was really about, there would be a revolution by morning. I mean, that was like 70 years ago. I seem to remember that quote.
Well, let me take that back another 100 or so years. How about our founding fathers saying, if you ever allow a private bank to issue your money, the banks and the corporations that spring up around them will leave your children homeless in the land we conquered.
Yeah, well, so we saw that in 2008. And look, I don't know about who knew what, when, or you know, a revolution. That's a pretty strong word. I just said, I think Henry Ford used that. But what we do find now is that more people know about how it works, and they understand that the people are not getting the good end of the stick. And so more people are becoming active. That this is the roots and the basis of the Occupy Wall Street movement and other protest movements that are coming out, and they're a nonviolent type of movement, which isn't usually preferred, but the issues are this underlying corporatocracy, I believe might be the word, that's creeping up on us. Some may argue that it's already here, and that it is the banks and those interests and the corporate interests who are dictating to us how our money is created, how our money gets spent, who has to pay, who gets taxed over others. Although taxation may be a whole separate issue, because the Constitution does provide for certain methods of raising funds, and it's possible that the income tax, at least the way it's structured, isn't the best way. But there's more talk about tax reform also. So we're in a time of great change, and I'm very optimistic that these issues are coming to the fore. Because what happened to me, I got activated politically now to actually start speaking out and shifting some things. And I want to tell you about another project that came to me that is very exciting, and it's about actually reversing Citizens United here, right now, within the next month or two, through legal system and a constitutional amendment, but not the constitutional amendment that many folks might have heard about making a new one that might take years. So people are getting active, and I'm very optimistic that with our higher learning about all these issues, that we're going to get some change done this year.
What was this Citizens United thing? What is this? What are we talking about?
Well, Citizens United was a Supreme Court decision that was passed, not passed. When I say passed, as you and your listeners understand, that goes to the root of the problem. Citizens United was a Supreme Court decision that came down, that was decreed in 2010, that basically gave corporations unlimited spending in state elections. That it overturned some other laws that had limited corporate spending, and so this Citizens United decision said that no, those bars are lifted. Corporations can basically spend as much as they want in state elections. Well, the state of Montana said, no way. We have laws on our books that strictly limit corporate spending. As a matter of fact, in some instances, they can't contribute at all to candidates' elections, or other advocacy types of, promoting for electioneering, they call it. So Montana said, no way, and their Supreme Court said, our laws stand. We're going to ignore Citizens United. The Constitution says we can make our own election laws, and that's it. Well, two corporations in Montana sued the state of Montana and said, no, you have to pay attention to the Supreme Court. And Montana said, well, no. But the corporations then sued the Supreme Court to get the Supreme Court to hear the case and overturn the Montana State Supreme Court. So that's where it is right now, that this case, Montana, against the Citizens United group, is being petitioned to the Supreme Court to be heard, and it'll be up to the court to take action. Was that clear?
I think so. Yes. Now, but this doesn't affect anything in federal elections. So if the corporations want to spend a few billion on advertising for Obama, they could do that, couldn't they?
Not in Montana.
Not in Montana.
No.
Is this going to spread to other states?
For any election. Now, this case that was brought only deals with the state elections, but the state in the Constitution, it's Article 1, Section 4, that says the state shall have the power to prescribe the manner of holding elections. And there's nothing more central to deciding the manner in which a state's going to hold their elections is, well, who gets to spend money on it. So they do have the power. They can limit the election money on even on their Senate races or their House of Representatives or presidential races. And in a state like Montana, the most central thing would be for a Senate race, because a Senate seat is just as valuable from a small state like Montana or Alaska or a small population state as it is from New York or California, a big state. So if it costs $50 or $100 million to get a Senate seat in New York, but it only costs $2 million to get one in because you only have to deal with 700,000 or 800,000 people to get a seat in a small state, then money comes in from out of state to affect their elections. Nobody in Montana is going to spend $2 million or $3 million on that. It all comes in from out of state to affect Montana's representation. And that's where Montana drew the line. They say, no, we know that money corrupts. So that's where they're at. They are fighting this in the Supreme Court, and so I'm now a co-founder of another association. It's called the 11th Amendment Movement, or TEAM, T-E-A-M, the 11th Amendment Movement. And what we are doing is we are filing a brief in the Supreme Court to put the argument that the 11th Amendment to the Constitution says that a state cannot be sued in federal court like this, in this instance, by a private party, private corporation. The Supreme Court has no jurisdiction to even hear the case. They should not accept the case. And if the Supreme Court denies jurisdiction, then Montana's laws will stand. And Citizens United will be effectively reversed. It'll be irrelevant in Montana, right here, right now, and this could happen in the next month or two without a big, long, others making a new constitutional amendment or all that, which could take years.
What is the goal of this? I mean, is this to allow these international corporations, or international banks for that matter? Now let's, we probably need to talk again about this 8th largest bankruptcy. Where'd that money go? Who bailed them out? Where's the money going to? I mean, it's you read a little bit about this in the paper, but nobody really. I don't think there's any real clear picture of who's pulling the string, who benefits here, who profits. I can tell you who loses, and that's the American people. We get we're going to get austerity programs. We're going to get this and all that to pay back all of this money that we gave to the bankers that printed the money in the first place.
Well, I wish I knew the answers to all your questions. I can tell that
who benefits?
Done many long and hard considerations of all these issues, and I don't know the answers to all of that, but I do know that by being willing to look at the questions, we can start to get some answers. And there are lots of ways now for people to research these things and get educated, and then there are ways to take action. Now, in some respects, it's difficult for somebody sitting at home, feeling the pressures. What can I do? Well, what I would say to that is, we can do what we can do, just on the individual level, even if it's just calling a friend and talking and saying, hey, did you see about this? Let's learn about this. Or maybe the next step is, maybe there is a local councilman who will listen, write a letter. They do actually read their letters. Now, whether they're the bigger, once you go up the chain, they get influenced by the money that comes from corporations or other influences. But I'm very optimistic. So one of the things that I was able to do was to help organize this group, and people can go to our website. It's www.11thamendment.org. That's 11th amendment.org. And there are some ways to very simply be involved. We have ways to just do a little email letter to the state attorneys general to help them support Montana, because the Supreme Court does look at those things. When they see a lot of states come on board supporting another state, they look and they will see that that they have an issue. So even just an individual at the very basic level can do something very simple, send a letter to their state attorney general. We have it all set up there to go to their state, and then and we get the ball rolling, and we get our voice heard. And as more people start to find their voice, then the voices get louder.
All right, I've got that up. I will add that to this show and to the website. So we'll have that on there too.
Great.
And the press release says May 9th, for immediate release, Montana okays the 11th Amendment Supreme Court challenge to Citizens United, Helena, Montana. Montana Attorney General's office has given permission for a legal brief to be filed with the U.S. Supreme Court. They'll argue the position that the 11th Amendment to the Constitution forbids the court from taking jurisdiction and hearing a case involving Montana citizens. Now, let me, there was in Arizona here, shortly, they were suing the Attorney General was suing the state of Arizona because we passed a law allowing the police to question or pick up illegal immigrants. Would this 11th Amendment organization have any bearing or something like that?
The 11th Amendment is it's a little understood one. It's a very important one. It was the very first amendment to the Bill of Rights back in 1795. And if we have time, I can tell you the story of that. It's a very interesting...
Yes, sir. We've got time. We've got 10 minutes left in this half-hour segment, and then we'll have a whole nother half-hour.
Okay.
And we can discuss anything that you want, go in any way you want. Do you want to take any calls?
What's that?
Do you want to take any calls or any questions?
Absolutely. I would love to hear what folks are thinking. And
I don't usually take a lot of calls, so that may not happen, but we will check it out.
Okay, that's fine. But to answer the Arizona case, that the 11th Amendment prevents the federal judiciary from taking jurisdiction except in very specific circumstances. So there are some circumstances where a state can be sued in the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court would take jurisdiction. There are constitutionally authorized circumstances. In the Montana case, that is not one of them, because a private corporation or a private individual cannot do it. That their only redress is through the state courts, through Montana, and once they got to the Montana Supreme Court, and Montana Supreme Court ruled, that was the end of their appeal process. Now, the only way that a private corporation could take a case to the Supreme Court in this way would be if the issue involved a violation of the 14th Amendment, which would be either due process or discrimination, equal protection under the law. So the Supreme Court has ruled that the 11th Amendment could apply even when a private entity sues the state, but only if it has to do with the 14th Amendment. And even in that case, the remedy is for Congress has to act. The elected branch must pass a specific statute addressing that issue in that case specifically. In other words, granting the court jurisdiction to hear the case. But that has to come from the elected branch. The Supreme Court is an appointed branch, and it's only a few people. So the framers of the Constitution were very smart in putting this as a check and balance, that the Supreme Court cannot, a few people cannot grab jurisdiction over a state and rule one way, and it has to come from the fuller elected branch of all the Congress, because then that more represents the will of the people rather than just a few possibly corruptible appointed judges. So, not that any Supreme Court judges are corrupted, but the framers saw that that was a possibility. So they put in the Constitution these ways that it could be remedied. So in Arizona's case, I don't know all the facts of the case, Clay, so I cannot comment specifically. But if that case has to do with some sort of a discrimination under the 14th Amendment, which it sounds like that might be an issue, then the Supreme Court can take a jurisdiction on it. Now, in this case, the Congress did not act to give them the right to do it, but the other way to do it is if the executive branch, the other elected branch, can also instruct their Justice Department to sue a state directly. And I believe that is what happened with Arizona. It's the Justice Department that is suing Arizona. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes, sir.
So that is allowed.
Okay.
That there are ways that, that prevents a state from, running amok and doing things that are unconstitutional and with no redress. So they put these things, the checks and balances are just they hold true even to this day. They knew what they were doing. And we just have to look to making sure that those things are enforced. And that's what the 11th Amendment movement is. In the 11th Amendment specifically, to prevent the Supreme Court, a few appointed individuals, from grabbing power, unconstitutional power, away from the states. It's a state sovereign right issue, and it's very clear that those conditions do not apply in the Montana case. They should refuse to hear Montana's case, and then Montana's law would stand.
And people can help by signing up, by doing some, trying to put some pressure here?
Yeah, the first thing would be go to the website, 11thamendment.org, and familiarize, to get comfortable, get in there and read what it's all about. Yeah, to read about it and find out what the Montana case was and how the Supreme Court is. There's an article there. There's some very easy to follow articles as to how this works, and then there's a place where they can contact their state attorney general, asking their state attorney general to sign on to Montana's brief, or it's actually another state's brief, to support Montana in this. And as we grow, we have some other initiatives to also force the politicians to enforce the Constitution. There's some other initiatives that we're discussing, but right now we're focused on the 11th Amendment in this particular Montana case. Yeah. And people may be inspired in many different ways. I know I was. When I heard about it, I had no idea 6 months ago. You tell me I'd be out here, I'm involved in filing a legal brief to the Supreme Court of the United States. Well, I was fired up. I was inspired, and I think as people get inspired, they will find their own ways of being involved, and their individual voice, as small as it might be now, we pool those together, and it grows. And look what happened with the Occupy Wall Street. Their voice is growing. They're getting motivated, I think, and their big issue is this idea of the money in the banks, taking over. So I know that's an issue dear to your heart, and we're going to get some change done.
There is a lot happening. Matter of fact, I've got a guest coming on, Kirk McKenzie, coming up next Wednesday, May 23rd. He's Defend Rural America, and they're talking about our farmers and our ranchers, and really taking back local control. Sheriff Richard Mack, who's been on my show many times, who beat the Brady bill, he's organizing the sheriff's departments as constitutional sheriffs to support the Constitution. That's really what it's all about, isn't it? Taking back the local control of